Next Friday, the penultimate film in a decade-long DC extended universe will release to cinemas. And is it the final chapter of the Justice League? Is it another Batman film with Ben Affleck, or Robert Pattinson, or even George Clooney? Or what about a second Superman film? Nope, none of these. It's Blue Beetle.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
The DC Cinematic Universe has been a perfect example of how to mess up a popular franchise. From the Justice League Snyder Cut palaver to Henry Cavill being rehired and then fired over the space of 6 weeks. To James Gunn and Peter Safran renaming the DCEU to DCU, which effectively declared the scheduled DCEU films pointless. Blue Beetle not only suffers from the complete disorder of the cinematic universe it is part of, but has little to no name recognition. It's a superhero origin story that comes out 15 years after Iron Man's origin film, and was created by the previous DC leadership, but is now sort of part of James Gunn's DC reboot. And on top of all of this, it was originally set to be released on HBO Max, but is now getting a theatrical release. So Blue Beetle really is one of the messiest, strangest, and most handicapped films to come out in a while. So let's take a look at how we got here, and why Blue Beetle is predicted to have only a $30 million opening weekend, which to put into perspective would be around half of The Flash's opening weekend, and just slightly more than Cocaine Bears. The primary reason I believe why Blue Beetle has virtually no hype at all is because of the abysmal performance of the last 7 DCEU movies. Now we all know that Warner Bros. Superhero films haven't done too well over the last few years, but if we take an even closer look, then we can truly see the extent of how bad the DCEU has done financially. From the original Shazam in 2019 all the way up to The Flash 2 months ago in June 2023, not one of the last 7 DCEU films has made over $400 million worldwide at the box office. 3 of them, in fact, didn't even make $200 million. Shazam 1 had a profit of just under $200 million, Birds of Prey had a small profit of $37 million, Wonder Woman 1984 had a loss of $200 million, which was repeated by the Suicide Squad, again making a loss of $200 million. Black Adam nearly broke even with a loss of $9 million, Shazam Fury of the Gods made a loss of $118 million, and The Flash made a loss of over $100 million, potentially much more if we go with the unconfirmed production budget. It's worth pointing out that Wonder Woman 1984 and The Suicide Squad were released during COVID. But this negative trend, which is as clear as day, shows just how badly the DCEU have done over the last few years. And even before that, with Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League, and Aquaman, despite making money, they certainly weren't critically praised. Blue Beetle is part of a cinematic universe that people have long given up on, in favour of the much more profitable MCU. And even with the MCU, many are just bored of their films and TV shows. So Blue Beetle perhaps had a chance of being a well-liked and potentially profitable film many years ago. But now with the awful decade-long track record of DC films, and a noticeable decline in interest of the superhero genre, it's easy to see how Blue Beetle is just the wrong film at the wrong time. Iron Man came out 15 years ago, and we've had 3 different live-action Spider-Men in around the same time, and over 40 superhero films in the last 10 years. So of course, Blue Beetle feels like a film years too late, because quite simply, it is. It's a friend who comes to the party at 11:55 PM. The other hurdle Blue Beetle has to overcome is that unlike Batman or Superman, the general moviegoing public have no idea who or what Blue Beetle is. The name recognition for Blue Beetle has got to be down with the likes of Squirrel Girl, Beta Ray Bill, and Marshmallow Man.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
The last one is technically not a superhero, but you get my point. So in order to get Blue Beetle's name out there, you would imagine that DC have given the film a big marketing push. Well actually, no they haven't. We've had 2 trailers and that's about it. I haven't seen any posters on buses, TV spots or trailers at the cinema. And this lack of marketing is perhaps due to the fact that Blue Beetle was scheduled to be released on HBO Max and not receive a theatrical release at all. This of course changed in late 2021, and it seems pretty clear that Blue Beetle wasn't given a budget equivalent to a film that was set to be released at the cinema from its inception. Since James Gunn announced that the DC Extended Universe would be culminating with Aquaman 2 in December this year, 2 movies have been released, Shazam 2 and The Flash, both of which unquestionably failed at the box office. To what extent was this failure due to audiences not caring anymore because they were part of the walking corpse of the DCEU, we don't know for sure. But it's beyond doubt that being part of a franchise with an expiry date can't have helped either movie. Blue Beetle, however, is part of James Gunn's new DCU, despite being created long before Gunn's takeover and presumably not involving any characters from the new DC universe. With Blue Beetle's director Angel Manuel Soto saying the following: "We are part of the plans that they have been creating for the future installments of the DCU." James Gunn also chimed in to say the following: "Yes, Blue Beetle and a handful of other characters will continue on in the DCU. Even though the first DC Studios movie is Superman Legacy, brackets, the first DC Studios project is the animated TV show Creature Commandos." It's all a bit confusing really, but for those wishing that the DCU would be a fresh start from the DCEU, think again. Blue Beetle is part of the new DCU, but it is released 4 months before Aquaman 2, which is part of the now dead DCEU. This rather confusing timeline means that Blue Beetle will suffer the worst of both worlds, with many assuming it's part of the dead DCEU, and as it's the first superhero film set in the DCU, it's got a lot more riding on it, as in effect, it is the starting point for the next 5 years at least of DC films. Now before we end the video, let's look at the potential positives of Blue Beetle. The character has a really fun premise, being protected by an alien battle scarab that transforms into a suit. He's sort of a mix between Spider-Man with his youthful naivety, Venom with a symbiotic relationship with an alien that forms around him, plus the aesthetic of Iron Man's nanotech suit. So the interesting visuals and potential to be a charming superhero is certainly there. That being said, I don't believe that it's anywhere near enough to overcome all the obstacles that we just mentioned. Meaning that in my opinion, Blue Beetle is a dead set flop from day one. Now will you watch Blue Beetle? And do you agree with my assessment that it's going to flop badly at the box office? Or do you think it's got the potential to become a surprise, moderate success, in the veins of Shazam 1? Let me know in the comments below. If you're new here, then perhaps consider subscribing to Film Club. I'll be reviewing Blue Beetle next week, as well as the first 2 episodes of the Ahsoka show the week after that. Thank you for watching, and see you again.